Let's look at how files are handled in Python. So we will start with a very simple function that actually allows us to open a file if it exists. And if it doesn't, it will create it for us. So it's just a matter of how do we use this method or this function. So let's try to create a file that doesn't exist. And once you create that file, at that moment, you can tell it in what mode you want to do that action. In our case, we want to write to the file. Before I do anything, let's investigate how many files I have so far in this directory or in this project. As you can see here, I have firstprogram.py. So this is the area in which I edit text that will become my program. So this is not the file that I will be opening. This is not the file that I will be putting data in it. So I'm going to create another file, and we're going to see it here as a tab eventually. I'll open it to show that the file will have some content in it. So let's get started. So here's how you do it. You create an object or a variable, if you will, and you can call it my file. And then you make it equal to this function open. And now in this, you're going to have to write the arguments that you're going to need here to create the file. One, you start with the name of the file. Now we don't have this file, but I'm going to call it my file. Or you can call it whatever you want. So let's call it the file. And then we're going to give it an extension .txt. So we're going to store in it text. We're going to see other formats of files if we're going to store text or binary data, right? So we're going to do it this way. Now, we're going to put a comma, and we're going to say in what mode do we want to create this file. Now, this file doesn't exist. So that means we want to be able to write to that file. So W is a flag that says this second argument here, we're saying open this file for us and assign it a write mode so that way we can write to it. Now, if you can do that, that means now the object, my file, okay, can have features or options or methods that allow us to associate to the file, the file.txt. So the beauty about this is the only time you're going to need to worry about the file name will be in this statement. After that, you no longer need to worry about it because you have this indicator here that points to this file, and we already know in what mode it's going to do it. So we can do something like this, my file, and then if I do a dot, notice now that I have a bunch of methods that I can use, unlike regular variable, right? So in here, this is an object that has methods. And we could say, okay, what do we want? Well, we're going to use the write function or method, and we're going to write a string to a file that didn't exist, but now we're going to create it. So let's go ahead and create something in there. Hello there. We're going to type the word hello there in that file. Now, make sure when you're done that you close the file. The way to do this is, again, you always reference to the object you created here. So my file dot close. Every time, I want you, when you open a file, make sure that you close it. Okay? It's a very good habit, so you don't have memory allocated to a file. You exit from the program, but it's still allocated to that file, even though you're not using it. Okay? That creates memory leaks. It's not a good thing. All right, so let's see what happens if I run this. And I want you to pay attention to this column here, what happens, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and run. And notice I have the file.txt. Now, our program doesn't indicate anything here. That's because this action was done in the background. It created the file. So if I double click on this right here, notice now I have a new tab, and it shows me that this file here has this data in it. It has text, hello there, okay? So this here allowed me to do that. So let's go ahead and write something else here. And My name is Drew. Let's run this again. Okay, as you can see here, we don't see anything, but if I go to the file, now I left this open, notice it writes over it. So, very important observation here. So if we go back to the program here, the write mode allows you to write over the file if it exists. If it doesn't, it will create it for you. Now, what if you wanted to make sure that every time you open this, if it doesn't exist, it creates it, but you want to append instead of writing over? Well, then you change this indicator to A. Now remember, before I run this, my name is Drew is in there, but now let's suppose the message changes here to hi there. What happens when you run this program? Now, mind you, this file already exists, and it already had my name is Drew. However, we're going to run the program in append mode instead of write mode. And we know the file exists, so that's not a problem. Let's see what happens. Now, obviously, when I run the program on my console, I don't see anything because I'm not printing to console or to the screen. Let's go to the file and notice it appended hi there to the file. So if I keep going and let's say it's nice outside, okay, and keep running this and go to the file, all it's going to do is append every time the text that you have in this method write. Okay, so even if I close the file totally and do it again, let's say I run it again. Now watch this, and let's open the file again. Notice it will do it twice now because that was the previous it's nice outside. That was already in the file. Then it will store it again. Okay, now obviously this isn't the best way to store data, but it shows you in append mode. You also have to be careful if you're replicating data or not. Okay, well, it depends if that's what you want. But at least you now know what the difference between A and W. Now let's suppose I change this to W. Okay, and run it again. And let's go to the file, and you will notice it's nice now. It's nice outside is written over everything we had. So by just changing it into W, that does that. Now, remember we closed the file. Okay? So that means in our program, if you are referencing to my file again, and you try to print it, for example, or do something with it, the file has been closed. So wouldn't it be nice if you take this and now reassign it to the actual file, open. And what we're going to do now is we're going to open it in read mode. So we're going to read what's in there and print to console. So now remember, write, we wrote to file. Now we want to be able to read from the file. So, and print to console. However, you need to tell it what is it you're trying to open. Well, the file.txt. And then what mode? Read. And the flag indicator is R. Okay? So notice the file was closed. You need to reopen. But this time you're in mode read. And then we can actually print the content of this file right here by saying, and then you reference again to the object my file. And we're going to say dot read. So we're going to pick the read right here. And we're going to see if the content of the file.txt, which is here, which we're going to write over anyway. And once we close it and we open it, should we see, and then make sure you also do this, my file, so always a good habit, dot close when you're done. Okay? And let's see if it prints to console. So let's go ahead and run this. And sure enough, it prints it. It's nice outside. Okay? Now let's change this to something else. Hi there, right? So if I run this, it will be hi there to console. Let's go to the file, and hi there is there. So this is the basics. Okay? Now let's suppose I write here the wrong file name. So we have to be really careful because we're going to have to learn how to handle exceptions or errors. So let's call it file2. We know file2 doesn't exist. And we're trying to do it in read mode. And if you run it, it will tell you no such file or directory. But obviously this broke our program in a way at this line, right? And it didn't allow us to go any further in terms of reading even the file that we intended to do. So we're going to have to learn how to handle an exception or an error of this nature from now on once we handle files, okay? All right, so we've got a few exercises to do with files. This is an important topic, so this will be a multi-part learning experience, and hopefully we're going to be manipulating also contents of files and doing all sorts of analysis that will take us to the realm of a little bit of data science. So we're going to see special files that have data for interpretation, and that will be very useful for us. I will see you then.